It certainly embodies community learning centers and the spirit of giving and partnership that goes with CPS and our many, many community partners. So I extend my gratitude also to her. I wanted to start today as the CLC coordinator to give a little brief overview of the Community Learning Center. I am not here by myself today. In fact, I have the rowdy crowd in the back is with me. I have several people here today because the Cincinnati Community Learning Centers are about CPS, but not just about CPS. It is about the city, it is about the community, it's about our teachers, our families, our parents, it's about our community partners that you heard about in the Hayes presentation. So we're very excited today to touch upon this subject. We could be here for hours. We'll move as quickly as we can, but I'm very excited that we have several of the leaders and key stakeholders in this movement with us tonight. So I'm very happy about that. Very briefly, community learning centers are what has transformed our schoolhouses into a system of partnerships that are supporting our academic excellence. They bring social, recreational, educational, civic, and cultural opportunities to students and families. We say we have over 600 partners. To be honest, we stopped counting. Our partners have partners who have partners. So by the time you start, when we can actually quantify 600, but we can't quantify the number of people, organizations, individuals, and groups that give to our schools. They bring some of the examples that are up there of the services and programs. As you all know, the Community Learning Center model has grown over time. It began with the facility master plan. Darlene Kamine was the leader and coordinator at that time and really helped to start this model in our district. The board was a key player in that by establishing not only a policy but partnership guidelines, and Darlene will talk about those in a minute. We had initial funder commitment of $1 million for over 5 years from United Way and Greater Cincinnati Foundation, which led us to the opportunity to hire full-time resource coordinators in our building, and they have been key to the development of the model, and they of course are the stakeholders in the ground at the site to make sure partnerships are developed and fostered at schools. We have experienced a lot of growth and expansion lately. We were able to use stimulus dollars to add additional resource coordinators. We have had 36 after-school grants in our district. We were able to use some of those with our partners to build capacity for resource coordination. We also had a strategic plan. A group of key stakeholders and funders met in 2008, 2009, suggested the building of a little bit more infrastructure around the model and to take a closer look at how we were doing. We also have a learning partner dashboard for data collection and analysis. When our stimulus funds ran out, we began using title funds in combination with grant funds to continue the growth of the model. We have had additional partner expansion through two very important partners you'll hear from tonight, Community Learning Center Institute and Families Forward, who provide resource coordinators to us. We codified our process, and of course, we have had a great deal of national attention and interest. As said by Marty Blank, Cincinnati is a model of efficiency and effectiveness, and many other school districts are coming to us. They want to replicate our model. So for tonight, we're going to talk a little bit about how we're doing. So right now, board policy is that all schools will become community learning centers. 36 of our 55 have resource coordinators. These resource coordinators come from 15 different community-based organizations. They are chosen by the site. 26 of them are funded through CPS with blended funding of Title I and grant awards, and you can see some of the grant sources that we've used to build out support for our model. 10 are funded by our partners, including Community Learning Center Institute and Families Forward. At the District for Support, we have a training committee which is based on the district, which is comprised of district personnel, but also of our community partners. We get together and plan training, coffee chats, formal and informal opportunities for the school district, our community partners, and our community to talk about educational initiatives and also to train resource coordinators. We have a data collection and full-time person from Strive Partnership who supports our use of data. And of course, this year we've had enhanced communication. We have a manual, which you've seen, a website, which I hope you've looked at, CLC, CincinnatiCLC.org. And of course, this year we launched the school year with our calendar. We also have an expanded focus in our community learning centers. We have early childhood connections that we are making very intentionally. 4Cs and Lisa Garofalo are working very hard with several of our schools to make sure that students coming to our schools have the resources and are ready and prepared to be successful in school. We have a New Choice Neighborhood Grant, which will provide the district the first opportunity to have an early childhood resource coordinator to figure out with us how to put resources on children before they enter our buildings to make them more successful, and an arts integration specialist who will build community arts lesson plans, integrating our curriculum with arts and music that can be delivered outside the school day. You'll hear a little bit later from one of our partners about our cutting-edge work with social emotional competencies. We have piloted a Devereaux skill strengths assessment pilot with our after school, and Paul LaBeouf, the author of that tool, has met with district leadership to figure out how we might expand that for use in our community learning centers. We are also looking at how to be career ready in elementary schools with our partners. On the evaluation, we have a local and national interest. Monica Mitchell will present briefly about what's going on locally and what she's learned, but we also have requests from Institute for Educational Leadership, Weichert Foundation, and the RAND Corporation to work with us in a more detailed evaluation. So that's a brief overview, but I want to hurry and get the important people up here. I would like to introduce first, we have presenters, but I would like to take a minute to first introduce Darlene Kamine. Darlene is the Executive Director of Community Learning Center Institute and really the founder initiator of the Community Learning Center model. We're very privileged that Darlene runs alongside of us with full force as we build out the Community Learning Center model in our district. Darlene? Is that the clicker?
Thank you so much for the opportunity to meet with you this evening. I would first like to introduce Annie Bogenschutz, who is part of our Community Learning Center Institute team. Annie was the first resource coordinator in the district at Windsor School. She went on to become the resource coordinator at Ethel Taylor, which received the Coalition for Community Schools Award of Excellence for the Best Community Learning Center in 2011. Annie joined the Community Learning Center Institute in 2012 as the Director of Training and Development and works with our team of 7 resource coordinators. She is also part of a team working with Julie Doppler and the district to provide training and support for all of the CPS Community Learning Center resource coordinators. It was Annie's handiwork in preparing the award application that earned the district the 2013 Coalition of Community Schools Award of Excellence, the first given to a district-wide initiative. My name is Darlene Kamine. I'm the Executive Director of the Community Learning Center Institute, and I became involved in the development of community learning centers when I left the magistrate's bench in juvenile court in 1999 and was invited by former President Eileen Cooper Reed to join the Children's Defense Fund. I later became a consultant directly to CPS as part of the facilities master plan. CPS had asked the Children's Defense Fund to partner in the planning for the facilities master plan through a new approach with a new paradigm. Dr. Adamowski, then superintendent, and the late Governor Gilligan, who was then a new member of the Board of Education, understood that the building of new buildings would not by itself reverse the trend of declining enrollment and diminish public support. Unlike almost any other school district in the country faced with the urgencies of the challenges that faced us in the late 90s, this board did not just grab at another expensive academic reform package. After a year of community forums and learning expeditions that included parents, residents, and even the county coroner, the Board of Education created the vision and framework which is responsible for the transformation that is underway in our district and our city. The Board of Education's guiding principles for community learning centers, passed in 2001 and reaffirmed by this board in 2009 with Board of Education Policy 7500, continues to provide the bedrock of our community learning centers and the reason that the Cincinnati model has become the national model. It is this board's unique approach that New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio called extraordinary in a press conference earlier this month, when he shared his plans to redevelop 100 New York City schools as community learning centers based on the Cincinnati model. As we review our progress and discuss our next steps, it is important to examine the 5 elements which have proven especially critical to our success and which we must be sure to safeguard and strengthen. First, this board is among the very few who understood the success of the school and the success of the community are inextricably linked. Students cannot be successful if their families and neighborhoods are not stable, safe, and vibrant. So the most visionary element of the board's policy is the redefinition of schools as the centers in the community, developed through the engagement of the whole community in the planning, implementation, and ongoing accountability. In the updated Board of Education Policy 7500, the board was even more explicit in the definition of the function of the school as center of community, responsive to the vision and needs of students, families, and community members before and after school, as well as during evenings and weekends year-round. So in a few words, the board changed the paradigm from the form and function of a traditional school building to a thriving community hub of partnerships, providing support, enrichment, and vitality, responsive to the unique vision of each school in its neighborhood, developed through an ongoing community engagement process. It is not a pathological, deficit-based set of wraparound services intended to remediate. It is the opportunity to create the kind of school to which every one of us would want to send our child, and the opportunity to leverage the public's investment in our public schools to create the kind of neighborhoods where we would choose to live and where our children and grandchildren will make their home in the future. From the first point, which sets out the transformational vision, the second point of this straightforward and elegantly constructed constitution for the CPS Community Learning Centers, the board next created the framework for implementation through site-based governance by the LSDMCs, which were already in existence and already charged with responsibility for their school's yearly strategic plan, or one plan. Through the representation of all of the school and neighborhood constituencies on the LSDMCs, parents, community, teachers, and administrators, there is ongoing community engagement. The LSDMC brings the careful, passionate, and focused attention to what is closest to them, their children, their neighborhood, their quality of life, which is impossible to achieve in a centralized system. In the updated Policy 7500, the board spells out the responsibility of the LSDMC to select the partners, to evaluate the partners on an ongoing basis, and to terminate the partners if they fail to meet the expectations and goals of the one plan. Integrating the LSDMC's responsibility for the Community Learning Center partnerships with the one plan reinforced the integration of the academic program and the partnerships. This policy made it clear that the school and the Community Learning Center were not two separate things. The school is the Community Learning Center, and that the conditions for learning must be in place both within and beyond the school day and school walls. In addition to the two building blocks set forth by the guiding principles, community engagement and site-based governance by the LSDMC, CPS also approved the parameters for partnerships to answer the first question that pops into mind when a great new initiative is announced: who will pay for it? To ensure long-term sustainability and to break the pattern of starts and stops in reaction to expired grants and budget shortfalls, CPS made it clear and plain: district dollars must be devoted to education, and all partnerships must be self-sustaining. This is the third important element, the strategy of leveraging the public investment in the building and the school's infrastructure with other public and private investment. In many cases, this required just the reallocation of existing dollars in a more coordinated and efficient way. To make the transition from decades of an uncoordinated mishmash of unaccountable programs with a spaghetti bowl of funding, including dollars from the district budget, we created an infrastructure to provide the capacity necessary to ensure that the LSDMCs would have real choice in the selection of quality partners who could meet the expectations of the Cincinnati CPS model, including financial self-sustainability. Early in our planning for the community learning centers, one of the former board members asked, how would we be sure that there would be an equitable allocation of resources across the district? She asked, would we ensure that each school community, even those later in the development, would have a genuine choice of quality partners? That question prompted the invention of these networks, which have been the backbone of the infrastructure for the partnerships. This is the fourth of the critical elements of the CPS Community Learning Center strategy, and we are told that it is unique in the nation. We call this infrastructure our partnership networks, which together comprise our cross-boundary leadership team. It is my understanding that you will be hearing a report from some of the partnership networks at future meetings, including Growing Well, our health partnership network, and MindPeace, our mental health network, which have made it possible to create what will be 24 school-based health centers and more than 50 mental health teams. Each of these networks is a collaborative of the agencies, programs, and resources that are committed to the CPS Community Learning Center model, including high standards, selection by the LSDMC, alignment with the One Plan, shared accountability for the bottom line of the school and community, and a demonstrated ability to be financially self-sustaining. Through the tracking of our Community Learning Center Institute sites, the 7 sites where we have resource coordinators, we have estimated an average of at least $3 million per year in the value of the partnerships provided through this self-sustaining model, with much more at mature sites like Euler. And finally, the 5th but single most important element that makes all of the parts come together, the resource coordinator. This is just a couple of pages of one of what we call the organizational charts that show you how many partnerships these resource coordinators are responsible for, and you got some sense of that today. We had a notion that the resource coordinator would have to be part of the model for community learning centers, but it was not part of the original guiding principles, and we tried to get along without it as a distinct position, mostly because we couldn't figure out how we were going to pay for it. This was virtually the only new piece for which we had to find new dollars, as there was no resource coordinator already in existence. Resource coordinator agency, already in existence. In 2006, as Julie said a few moments ago, we received our first new dollars for resource coordinators from the United Way and the Greater Cincinnati Foundation. Their contributions were pooled together with funds from the 21st Century Grants, which were primarily intended for after-school programming, and that took care of our first 9 resource coordinators. As resource coordinators had made such a tremendous impact, it was clear that we had to add more resource coordinators, and CPS added Title I dollars. The Hale Foundation also came on board and is a committed donor to the pooled resource coordinator funds as well. In 2009, the Community Learning Center Institute was established to provide ongoing support for the growth and sustainability of the CPS Community Learning Centers, and we now fully fund 7 resource coordinators separate from the CPS pooled funds. In addition, Families Forward has consistently raised funds to support 3 additional resource coordinators without dependence upon the CPS funds. After 8 years, we have gone from 9 to 36 resource coordinators with a total investment of approximately $2.5 million per year. Consistent with the original design of the model, each community learning center selects its own lead agency to provide a resource coordinator, and the LSDMC approves not only the agency but the specific person to be hired as the resource coordinator. And as Julie said a few moments ago, we have at least a dozen different community agencies serving as the lead agency for the 36 resource coordinators, as well as 2 that are employed directly by CPS. In about a month, April 8th to be exact, 2,000 people are expected from across the country and all over the world to arrive in Cincinnati to see and learn about our community learning centers, as Cincinnati has been chosen to host the Coalition for Community Schools National Forum. The constant media attention, including a year-long series on NPR's Marketplace and coverage by the New York Times, has confirmed our leadership in the field. But we know that we can't be complacent, as we have so much more to do to meet the vision that this board has held since 2001. Looking at where we are now with the 5 key elements necessary for success, we are grateful that the board has already undertaken the strengthening of the alignment and support for the LSDMCs to ensure the critical function of site-based governance and the ongoing engagement of the community. We are also pleased that the partnership networks and the cross-boundary leadership team are solid, and that each of our networks is supported by its own independent board and sustainable funding. Just this past year, we added 3 new networks with their own directors: the Children's Oral Health Network, which is part of Growing Well, and which was responsible for standing up our first dental clinic at Euler; the Early Childhood Network, which is working to ensure that each community learning center is an early childhood hub; and the Arts Network, which is providing after-school programming from dance to cheerleading to poetry. One of the 2 remaining areas which require our redoubled focus is the commitment to serve children, families, and the community beyond the school day and year-round. Just as the success of the school and the success of the neighborhood are intertwined, our children will not thrive in school if their families and neighborhoods are not thriving. Despite the energy and lift of all that is going on in Cincinnati, the poverty rate is still rising, and a shameful number of our children and families are still losing their homes and moving from couch to couch. While most children in middle-class homes are using computers almost before they can start to walk, about 20% of the families in many of our neighborhoods have computers and internet access in their homes. And their parents are unable to be in touch with the teachers or follow their child's progress through the online Power School program, which prevents the most basic parental involvement. Many of our neighborhoods don't have a recreation center or ball fields and green space, not to mention access to a grocery store, which makes it almost impossible to pursue the healthy eating and exercise that is necessary for wellness. We have started to address this with extended hours in the clinics and the hiring of family practitioners who can see all members of the family. We have a satellite of Findlay Market on the Roberts campus so that everyone in the community has access to fresh and healthy food. The International Welcome Center at Roberts, the refugee services being developed at the Academy of World Languages, the election of our resource coordinator at Mount Airy as the president of the Mount Airy Community Council, all of these are getting us closer to the vision of this board to recreate our schools as centers of the community. With the leadership of this board is reflected in the recent resolution to work more closely with the City Council to further leverage and share resources, the community learning centers can contribute significantly to improving the quality of life for all of us. And if families are thriving, if neighborhoods are thriving, our children will thrive. I believe that as a result of this board's leadership in the alliance with City Council, we are already well on our way. So the one and most urgent challenge to meet this board's vision set forth in Policy 7500 is how to ensure that each community learning center will have a resource coordinator. This would mean securing our current funding level long-term, ideally without dependence upon Title I funding, and raising the additional funds to add about 15 more for a total of approximately $3.5 million a year. We know that both the state and the federal government are impressed with our model, and Congress just appropriated $10 million for what they call full-service community schools, an appropriation that has not been funded since 2010. Local funders are also interested in working more closely with CPS to create a long-term sustainability plan. In an editorial which appeared in the Huffington Post last year, they wrote, "What has made the Cincinnati model work so well? Steve Means, who attended the study tour for the U.S. Department of Education, characterized the initiative as having restored the social compact. And indeed, Cincinnati has found a formula that weaves together the resources of many community partners, business, public, and private agencies, higher education, neighborhood, and faith-based groups to design interventions and opportunities that work in alignment with principals, teachers, other school staff, and community members to achieve shared goals. It is our CPS Board of Education that has provided the leadership that enables all of us to work together to restore the social compact, and we look forward to our continued partnership. Thank you very much. And Annie's available if there are any questions. Okay.
Thank you, Darlene. I'd now like to invite Bond Hill Academy up, Mr. Boggs and the Families Forward, and we have Mr. Boggs to introduce Families Forward. We also have a parent from Bond Hill Academy to speak.
Good evening.
Good evening.
President Bolton, fellow board members, Superintendent Ronan. My name is Tom Boggs, principal of Bond Hill Academy. First of all, I would like to express my gratitude for our school, for Families Forward, a United Way agency, to be at our school. Each and every day, our students are faced with many academic and social challenges. By having Families Forward as a lead agency for the past 13 years, it has provided services that help students face life challenges in a positive manner by working with staff, student, families, and community. Family Forward uses a practical and integrated approach where school, home, and community are working together for the benefit of our students. Through this collaborative effort, it has allowed the staff to work collaboratively with Families Forward to improve our students' opportunity for success as lifelong learners. As a result, we're seeing an increase in the number of parents involved in our school and at school-related activities. Parents are becoming actively involved by attending parent-teacher conferences and parent workshops coordinated by the staff and the Families Forward Parent Center Coordinator. More parents and community members are giving of their time and efforts as volunteers to make our school a center for academic learning. Families Forward has been very instrumental in helping our school become a community learning center that enables our children to achieve their fullest potential as students and productive citizens in this community. Families Forward works with families, students to help improve student achievement by providing a comprehensive parent center, home visits, counseling service, and after-school program, and resource coordination. Through resource coordination, our school is able to solicit partners based on needs to achieve our academic and social goals. It has allowed community businesses, civic organizations, and the Bond Hill community to become valuable stakeholders in our school. I would like to introduce members of this very important team, a team that is goal-oriented for the needs of our students, and a team working collaboratively with one goal in mind, to raise academic achievement to new levels at Bond Hill Academy. I'd like to introduce Ms. Deborah Alsop, Executive Director of Families Forward, Mr. Henry, our on-site coordinator, Mr. Lewis Smith, a parent volunteer, a Parent Leadership Institute graduate, and the coordinator of our Bond Hill Academy's Positive United Youth for Change program. And each of those persons will give an opportunity to share their stories as well.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Boggs. I like seeing my name up on the big screen. I'm Deborah Mariner Alsop, and I was also part of that rowdy bunch back there that was cheering Hayes Porter on, because they're one of our partner schools also. I've had the privilege, members of the Board of Education, of being where you are some years ago, so I like to have fun. So if I'm a little bit irreverent, I know you need to wake up right now. So bear with me. But seriously, this is very, very important work, and I'd like to tell you a little bit about Families Forward in my own words and its evolution. Families Forward began in 1875 as the Ohio Humane Society. And before children were protected, animals were protected. So that's our legal incorporation. Around about 1920, we converted to looking at children, and we became the Children's Protective Society in conjunction with the Juvenile Protection Agency. And I want to give a little shout out to the United Way, because we're one of their 12 charter agencies, and they will celebrate their 100th anniversary next year, and we'll be a big part of that celebration.
Another rowdy.
In 1992, we made another switch because, as I said, we were a agency that was a contractor with the then Welfare Department, and the state laws changed, and the Welfare Department took its work back inside, and it created its own unit for children's services. And we were looking for a new home and a new mission, and the then president of Families Forward, Betty Hinton, and someone that's known to you named Julie Theodore, did a lot of national research and looked at different models and a way for us to continue to make big contributions in the community. So looking at Dr. James Coomer's model at Yale University, we said that we would be best served to switch our business to schools. And with the permission of the United Way, we took the United Way's invitation to be part of a demonstration project, and it was a 5-year demonstration project that was called the Family Resource Center Project. Families Forward was the only agency that was selected to work in schools. And with the support of Cincinnati Public, we began working in our first school in 1993, Hayes Elementary School, now Hayes Porter. And so for the next 5 years, all of our resources went into programming to try to demonstrate that prevention services helped children with their academic success. Hayes Porter at some point along the way went into redesign, and we were again able to kind of maneuver with United Way support to Parham School. Parham became Hoffman Parham, and now Evanston Academy. In 2000, we went to Bond Hill. And Mr. Boggs, I believe you were a teenager back then when we landed at Bond Hill. And in 2002, we went to Withrow University High School. Now, we're at all of these schools cumulatively, and our latest partner in 2009 was Carson School. And we ended up in Carson because there was a community agency that was working in the school that decided its mission and purpose really needed it to be more involved in the neighborhood. So we accepted the call, and we continued to serve 5 schools in total. Families Forward is about student and family engagement. And I think it's very important that the word family has been very prominent in our mission from the very beginning, except with the animals back in our early days, as we sought to prevent child abuse and neglect. One of the things that having said that we were a family resource center, we were very much in tune to what was going on with Cincinnati Public and the community learning centers. And around 2007, 2008, we were very amenable to working to convert and to adapt to the community learning center model. So our site managers, and Leslie, I believe you were a site manager at the time, we did a magic wand and he became a resource coordinator. We also had 2 other site managers that we did the magic wand with, but seriously, in talking with CPS and the leadership, we felt it was important for us to be collaborative. So we joined our resources, and I think as others have said, we fund 3 resource coordinators with the resources that Families Forward manages. I would like to switch a little bit to the schools that we're in and the kind of resources that we're putting into those schools. In our primary schools, we have a resource coordinator and an after-school coordinator, and our after-school coordinators and resource coordinators really help engage parents in student activities, workshops, etc. At our high school, we have at Withrow, we have 6 staff that we provide to Withrow. We have a resource coordinator, we have a college access coordinator, we have an after-school coordinator, we have a social worker, and we have 2 full-time tutors that are there for 6 bells. And one of the things that we do with our partner principals, we go in and we work with them and we ask them, what do you need? What do you need from Families Forward? So you may see different things in different schools, and it's because of the needs in the one plan and what the principal feels that we might be able to do to best serve the families in the school. One of the things that I would like to do now is to bring Leslie Henry on. He has been with Families Forward since 2002. So Leslie will talk to you a little bit more about partners, and he will introduce our superstar, Mr. Smith, who is our parent with us tonight.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Families Forward is, since I've been there in 2002, it's always been about families. And what can we do to engage families? And each year is different. And we've always had to sit down as a staff and get creative and say, what does this year's parents need? What do they need this year? Let's look at last year's data. Let's look at who we know is coming to the school this year. What do we need to do? And that's what we've done over the years, is that we've responded to the actual needs of the parents. And over the years, we've tried to build relationships with those parents that have lasted a very long time. And not only that, but to encourage them to become leaders in the school. And over the years, we've had lots of parents that not only through the after-school program, which is one of our main functions, but through other workshops and programs, we've always made a way to tie them in to what was going on in the school. So whether they became volunteers themselves, whether they develop initiatives on their own, this is what we've encouraged them to do. And if you saw the previous slide, you saw many of the partners that we have at the school. If you go to the next slide, you'll see the academic support program. And then right after this, we can go to this next slide, the next one after that, please. Yes. This social emotional learning. This is a research-based program, and this is something that we have piloted for the last 2 years in the program. And this is very important, I think, and something that is going to lead us into the future. And what this allows us to do is to look at students and look at their social emotional health. Once we look at their social emotional health, they're categorized into 3 areas. They're categorized as being in the need area, the typical area, or the strength area. And once we see what area they fall in, we can develop a program or set of initiatives to help the student become successful. So we've been piloting this for the last 2 years, and right now we're in the process of developing supports for these students that certainly need them. And before we do this, we certainly do get the parents' permission to move forward with this, and we're looking forward to great results. Again, I'll go back to Families Forward is all about families. So I'm going to introduce the star, Mr. Smith. And one thing I'll say about Mr. Smith this evening is that he does things the right way. He's a parent. He does things the right way. He went through the Parent Leadership Institute, learned how to become an effective parent, and that's exactly what he is. And the things that he is doing at the school right now, they're going to amaze you. I'm going to bring him up to discuss some of his work.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I'm a little tired. My kids wore me out. I am a proud parent, mentor, and tutor of 35 students at Bond Hill Academy. They're all my kids. I just call them all my kids. I had the pleasure of enrolling my daughter, who at the time was 9, at Bond Hill, and I ran into Miss Nettles. Quick story. Miss Nettles says, "Oh, Lois, why don't you go through the PLI program?" Okay, I'll see what it's all about. I've been here ever since, and I am proud of it. I work closely with Family Forward, follow the rules, do what needs to be done to improve the academics of our children. That's my main goal. I also had the unfortunate to say I was retired. Oh yeah, now that was, I think I work at Bond Hill now. So I've already mentioned I need an office, so I enjoy it. Our goal, as I mentioned, my goal is to see that every child, my program, our program is Bond Hill Academy, United Youth for Change. Our motto is Be the Change. It's a tutoring, mentoring program. It's a give back program. Our 4th, 5th, and 6th graders, they tutor the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd graders. The 4th, 5th, and 6th graders get tutored from Family Forward tutors. So it's a brick building. You know, it's more, we're keeping it moving in circles. We're making a change within themselves. That way they're getting everything that they need to say, okay, I'm going to the 6th grade. The tutors in Family Forward help them do that. How about 1st grader says, I'm going to the 2nd grade. The 4th, 5th, or 6th grader helps them do that. So it's a give back program. We have a 1st grader in our program now, since school started, has had straight A's. And today she made it her point to bring me her report card, her midterm. So I owe her lunch. And like I said, I'm a proud parent I have an 11-year-old, and she's actually my first student in the program, and she'll be the last. But our goal is to make sure that our students get a great academic education and have them go from the 6th grade on into high school, knowing that we can do this. I made the change. Thank you.
Thank you.
When I began to think about us becoming a community learning center, one of our visions was to become a world-class community learning center. And through the partnerships that we have, our goal is to continue to make that vision come to life. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bond Hill Academy. Now I want to bring forward our 2 last presenters here. First, Patty Nagelkirk. Patty's the Director of Community Impact for United Way. United Way has been at the table with us since we began, giving generously to us not only the initial investment, but reinvested in us a few years ago. But I'm bringing Patty here tonight not just because she's a funder, because she is a funder, but she is deeper and more involved with this work. We live kind of side by side. Recently, Patty has stepped up to help us lead the After-School Advisory Council for our community learning centers, and she is instrumental in bringing the DESA that you've heard so much about today. So Patty's going to do a very brief, very quick, because time is going, overview of the DESA and just give you a few highlights about where we're going.
So hi there. I was here 2 weeks ago and didn't realize I was coming back. And so when I talked to some of my co-presenters, I said the board already had the opportunity to hear some of United Way's contributions. And I'm going to promise you, I'm going to do this in about 45 seconds because you've had fantastic presentations, but it is long. And so actually the colleagues before me already gave you a snapshot of why I'm here. We knew how important social and emotional competence is to academics, lifelong learning, and one of the things that your after-school providers have been doing is piloting something called the Devereaux Student Strengths Assessments. And there are 4 of you, I believe, who have registered to show up to a meeting tomorrow at 1:30 to 3. Right, so I am thrilled that you're there because you've had 4 principals, you've had various members of the school board and multiple partners who have found great promise in a tool. And when you come tomorrow, you're going to hear a lot of information. And if you can't come tomorrow, we'll find some other way to give you a deeper dive. But all I'm going to show you is a couple slides of data just to give you a sense of what this tool will do. In your after-school programs, there are about 19 programs who are able to use the DESA Mini. It's a screen. It's looking for social-emotional competence that is going to be predictive of academic success. This 1,000 number doesn't tell you how many kids are in your after-school programs. It just happens to tell you the number of kids who had a DESA Mini last fall. This just shows you a breakdown of grades, male and female. The tool itself only goes up K to 8. We picked the tool, however, because there are very few research-based tools that actually go down to kindergarten. A whole lot of them start at 5th grade, and so we were pretty thrilled at this one. And you can do the screen in about 2 minutes. And it was very cheap, and the authors were helping us work through it. And you already heard some eloquent testimony from Families Forward. You also already heard from Mr. Henry about how it's categorized by strength, typical, and need. What you should know is the national norms are about 16% of the population is likely to be considered in the strength category. About 2/3 of kids fall in typical, and about 16% of kids across the population typically fall under need for instruction. Your kids who are in the need for instruction range are the ones where we're typically thinking about prevention. This could be a sign of academic problems down the road, could be a sign of some behavioral problems, and we've seen in places across the country it can be a very good prevention screen. Once you do the DESA Mini, you can do a full DESA if you want. We're not piloting that right now, but you'll hear more about that tomorrow. In your after-school programs, we were pretty thrilled to see how many kids fell in the strength category. We noticed that, wow, we had a lot more males who were in the needs, but that rings true with a whole lot of the research that you know. We're not making great analytics at this point. This, again, was just a snapshot. So don't make any interpretations based on this other than to know you've got some after-school programs who are piloting this, and we want to learn from it. Here's another one that shows you a similar breakdown by age and grade, and if we had more time, I would elaborate, but I'm going to pause and just tell you how grateful we are, along with your other 600 partners, to be part of this work for community learning centers and for your leadership. And so if there's something that I can provide, although I'm not going to come back in 2 weeks and give you another presentation, so thank you for your support.
Thank you.
And now we have Dr. Monica Mitchell to tell you very briefly about some of the findings in the evaluation of community learning centers.
Okay, good evening. I'm pleased to be here this evening. I'm an evaluator for Cincinnati Public Schools and have been for 10 years. I'm also the co-director of innovations at Cincinnati Children's Hospital. And I'm going to keep my presentation very brief. I want to get you guys very excited about the 4 slides that I'm going to present, because usually when you say evaluator, people kind of zone out. So you got a clicker? Okay. Okay, so some of this has already been said. I just want to say that in addition to some of the programmatic things that you've heard, we do have a model for ensuring quality improvement and monitoring, and it's called the REFORM model, and you can see there what the acronym stands for. So everything from reviewing the data, I'll talk a little bit about that, to measuring impact. We use Learning Partner Dashboard, and I may mention that briefly as well, but you probably have heard about that as well. So I'm just going to talk about some highlights. What we know from how we measure data through the Learning Partner Dashboard, which is the tool that resource coordinators use to log the information on the students who are served in community learning centers, is that we have almost 18,000 students who are served through services. And this could be everything from tutoring, which you heard about, to mentoring services, that long list that Julie presented at the beginning. And many of these are health services. So that's what inflates the number a little bit. So students who are going through our health clinics for different services. But that's a lot of students. And this is part of the reason why many different school districts come to us and say, wow, not only are you providing good services, but you know how to measure it. We also have students who are targeted for services. And this was really something that a way that we improved our model over time, because we learned we got better at figuring out which students were at highest risk or had the highest needs. So we have a very strengths-based model, which is very good, because we want to have many activities that all students can participate in, but it's also very important to know which students really need the tutoring, which students really can benefit greatest from the mentoring, and that's how you get to outcomes. You can see there the number of parents who attended a parent-teacher conference, and Julie already referenced the many community partners who make this model what it is. This is a graph that really talks about how we target students, and we really don't refer to needs, we refer to priorities. So how do we prioritize students? And when we first started tracking this data, the percents were much lower because we didn't really have a systematic way to identify students who really needed services. But you can see now, anywhere between around 75% to over 90% of students who really have those priorities, meaning that a student didn't pass the OAA or didn't pass the OGT, or they're having chronic absenteeism, we're able to identify those students and make sure that those are the students who we're matching to the services, the community learning center services. And this is really what resource coordinators look for, and they have the databases that allow them to do that. So they can actually flag, and it's like a color-coded system, and if a student's red, they know that those are students who need to be on those after-school programs or need to get those mentoring students first. So this is really a great graph that shows that. And like I said, when we first started looking at these percents, the percents were between 30 to 50%, and now you can see how high these percents are from the previous year. This is a graph where we look at whether or not students are making gains, and you can see across all of our key services here, which are the tutoring, mentoring, college access, family engagement. We're seeing gains in both reading, which is in blue, and math, which is in orange. And then this is my last slide, which just briefly mentions some of the things that I put in my report about, what are we seeing, what are the gains that we're seeing both programmatically and also in terms of the data trends, and what are some of the next steps. And I'll just emphasize some things that my co-presenters already said, which is the biggest gains that we see, which we're proud of, is that we're seeing changes relative to tutoring and mentoring. That's where we see the academic gains, because that's usually the biggest question that we see. And we've seen those trends. I've been the evaluator since the inception of community learning centers, but since we've been tracking this data, that's where we see the academic gains. But where the opportunities are, I think, where I put in the next steps are to look more holistically at our students and think about, health, social emotional needs, and school readiness, so that we can really have a fuller picture of the impact that we're making through our community learning centers. And then going back to Darlene's earlier point is making sure that we can ensure sustainability for our community learning centers and also our resource coordinators, so that we can go from 36 schools, hopefully, to all of our schools, having community learning centers in all of our schools. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
And to wrap up tonight, I have the most important speaker, the most important beneficiary of our community learning centers, and why we do the work we do. So I'm going to bring up Ashanti Dawson, the resource coordinator at Chase School, and she's going to introduce our final wrap-up speaker.
Hello and good evening. I'm Ashanti Dawson. I am the resource coordinator at Chase School. I'll just take a brief few minutes just to kind of introduce to you about the after-school program that we have at Chase Elementary. As many of you may know, there are many lead agencies in the after-school network that provide after-school care, such as Amani, Families Forward, Urban League, YMCA, and many other great organizations. I represent the Boys and Girls Club of Greater Cincinnati, which is one of 5 locations housed within CPS. The Boys and Girls Club at Chase is one of many partners that is housed within the school walls and assists in supporting the needs of our children and families in Northside. For the last 3 years, I have held a dual role as a resource coordinator and a site coordinator due to decreased funding in 21st Century Grant dollars. Serving in such a capacity has been very challenging, with the increased duties, long days, and overwhelming amounts of stress. Through this experience, I can attest to you that this is not a long-term fix to decrease funding. Last school year concluded the end of our 5-year grant with 21st Century, and this year we currently operate on donated funds through Boys and Girls Club of Greater Cincinnati and small grants from partners such as GE, Northside Education Committee, and community donors. Although the funds from the 21st Century Grant are gone and we are only able to serve a smaller portion of students, the program quality is still there. The after-school program is just an extension of the school day, where after-school staff work very closely with the staff of the school to assist students with their academic needs. Students are able to receive quality academic assistance from qualified staff and tutors. There are competitive sports available, community engagement projects, field trips, and a variety of programs designed to get our students and families a step closer to success. While I can talk to you at length about the after-school program and its benefits, I would like for you to hear from a very prominent example of how the after-school program has played an integral part in the success of one of our students. So, without further ado, I would like to introduce to you a long-term program participant, Ms. Kiara Thompson.
Good evening. My name is Kiara Thompson. I am in the 6th grade at Chase Elementary. For the past 3 years, I have been a part of the Boys and Girls Club at Chase. The Boys and Girls Club offers a safe place for me after school. They have taken me on field trips to colleges such as NKU and Cincinnati State. The Boys and Girls Club have also helped me through homework and tutoring. If it wasn't for the Boys and Girls Club at Chase, I would probably get in trouble a lot and not having a support system. The support system that I have is huge. I have my family, my Chase school teachers, and my teachers at the Boys and Girls Club. The support system helped me pass the Wanna Hills test. I am proud to say that I'll be a Golden Eagle next year. My future plans are to go to college at NKU to study to become a veterinarian.